Good afternoon. Thank you all so much for joining this panel titled Investing in Diversity and Brighter Futures. My name is Julissa Gutierrez, and I'm the Chief Diversity Officer for New York State, and proud to serve this Empire State for Governor Kathy Hochul's administration. In this panel, we want to understand who is putting money behind diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts. These outcomes, as you know, these investments are game changers, and the opportunities that they create are key to the success of not only a business, but also a family, for generations, for our communities. So, as you know, we're proud to be the home state of the highest utilization rate for MWBEs, but we don't take that for granted. We're constantly looking for ways to empower MWBEs and provide them with the support that they need to succeed in New York State. And that's why I'm excited to be joining you three here, this trio, this amazing trio, today to hear some of the best practices you're seeing as you work with clients and businesses and MWBEs across the state and even nationally for reaching and supporting MWBEs. And I really want to make sure that we highlight what are the funding opportunities that are available, specifically, again, for our MWBE audience. And what are the paths that they're creating for the MWBEs? As we all know, this has been a challenging time, and that the COVID-19 pandemic has presented a particularly difficult one and very gut-wrenching experience for all businesses, but particularly MWBEs and Black and brown businesses. So I hope that all of you who are participating here in person and online leave with some new ideas on building relationships, articulating your funding needs, and overcoming and succeeding in New York. I also want to remind that our live and virtual audiences share your comments and best practices in the chat for this session on the Fee Loop event site. And if you have a question for the panelists, please post them in the chat, and we will do our best to address your top questions. If you have a specific question for any of the panelists here today, please reach out to the speaker profile on the left side of your screen in the speakers section. Now, I want to introduce the following panelists, this amazing trio, like I said, we have with us James Bason, James Bason, President and Chief Executive Officer of TruFund Financial Services. Thank you, James.
Thank you, Molly.
Molly Belmont, Director of Community Relations and Development at Community Loan Fund of the Capital Region.
Thank you so much.
And the ending of the trio is the one and only Ray Salaberrios, Senior Vice President of the Small Business Capital Access at Empire State Development. Thank you, Ray.
Thank you.
I encourage you all to learn more about our speakers, our panelists, by visiting their speaker's bio on the Fee Loop site. Now, let's get started. And I want to kick it off with James. And in preparing for this panel, I saw a common thread amongst all of you. And I think, it's about, we're mission-oriented in the work that we're doing in the sector that we're in. We're about embracing economic development, but particularly within underserved communities and disadvantaged communities. And you have brought about some innovative financial solutions to assist these businesses. And so I want you to please expand on the services and the programs that you have been behind in placing diversity-driven efforts to invest in these businesses. And if you can walk us through a little bit what those programs are, the eligibility for MWBEs, and to scale it up a little bit, once these MWBEs receive an award, how can they get more access to funding?
Mm-hmm. Good. Well, thank you, Julia, and certainly it's welcome the opportunity to be here with Molly and Ray today, who are certainly on the front lines of providing access to capital and support to MWBE businesses. Here at TruFund, we're excited about the history of the organization. We are a community development financial institution certified by the U.S. Treasury. Our sole mission is to provide access to capital to MWBEs and people of color. So that's what we get up every day thinking about, and that's our mission. That would drive us. You know, this pandemic really has really brought to light a number of issues, and certainly access to capital is one of them. But it also has really shined a light on the tremendous racial wealth gap that exists in our communities, and how that translates into our business owners and their inability to get access to capital to really sustain themselves. And what we saw during the pandemic was that, you know, prior to the pandemic, we were, you know, providing access to capital to small business owners. But when the pandemic hit, that changed because of the racial wealth gaps that exist, where we didn't have the balance sheets or the liquidity or the family members that we could call on and get with the deep pockets to bring capital to those businesses to keep them alive and sustainable. And so we found that we had to shift our models. We had to go out, find the capital, be part of a number of programs here at the city and the state level, certainly working with Ray on a number of them, to get capital out in an emergency fashion, which is basically showing up as like, I need a lifeline now. I need somebody who understands my business model, where we've come from, and what we need to get through this, and align that capital with those needs. We've also found in this process that the word resiliency really manifests itself in all of our conversations. And that required us to kind of think about what programs we could bring to bear to be able to kind of help them with that resiliency. Certainly the short-term capital needs were there, but the longer term, once we get pandemic, what does that look like for you? How has the pandemic impacted your business model, right? And what do you need going forward? And so we talk about access to capital, and we talk about creating platforms where we can increase wealth, and we talk about access to capital basically as one form, and that's debt, right? But capital is more than just debt. There's other forms of capital that small business owners are looking for. So one of the things that TruFund has established, and we're going to be launching this program in January, which I'm very excited about, is really helping create some wealth within our small business community. And so we know that many of our business owners lease, and when we did an analysis, many of them are paying lease payments that could be equivalent to a mortgage payment. We see that they made significant investments in capital improvements in those leases for somebody else's property and for somebody else's benefit. So TruFund is launching programs that are innovative to kind of not only get you through the pandemic, but be able to adapt to meet your needs going forward. Equity is a prime other product that we're going to be bringing to the table, has brought to the table for our BIPOC developers, and looking to kind of expand that to the small business owners as well.
Thank you,
Yep.
James. And Molly, can you tell us a little bit about your organization and the efforts that you're putting behind D&I for the community?
Absolutely. The Community Loan Fund, like TruFund, is a community development financial institution. We're a CDFI, and our goal is community development, and we really believe that that starts with community. We do small business loans for focusing on minorities, women, and people of low income in underserved areas, and we also do loans for nonprofits and providing essential community services. And our loans really come with wraparound service. We learned early on that simply a loan was not going to be, it was going to be incomplete. But then we needed to pair all of our financial products with trainings and mentoring, one-on-one TA, in order to make sure that those projects were successful. And so that's what we've done. We're $66 million in loans and counting, and 950 development projects, and 334 of those are MWBEs. So we're very proud of our track record.
Excellent. And more to go.
Absolutely.
And Ray, I know that you've been crisscrossing the state, both virtually and in person. Tell us a little bit about the initiatives and strategies that ESD, the Empire State Development, is doing to help small businesses, and what you've been seeing across the board.
Thank you. So first, I'm very happy to be here. This is an amazing opportunity for me. I always tell folks, I was born and raised in the South Bronx, and for me, going upstate when I was a young man was going to Yonkers and going to New Rochelle. Right? It wasn't until I really got to working for ESD that I realized upstate meant going to Niagara County, the Southern Tier, and understanding one thing very important, that access to capital is for everyone. Although we want to focus and want to make sure we help and diversify our portfolio, make sure that black and brown individuals have a fair access to capital. We want to make sure that everyone has access to capital, right? But when I focus on the minorities and women-owned businesses, what we try to do is make sure that it fits for them, right? I want to make sure that when we do a grant, when we make a loan, it's what the individual needs. And we try to make sure that as we look at this holistically, that every small business has a need, a niche. Not everyone wants the same amount of money in the same format. I think James mentioned it. Some people want a line of credit. Some people want monies for machinery and equipment. Some people want working capital. How do we fit that? How do we get them to understand that come to us, ask us exactly what you need? Right, so I'll give you an example. During the pandemic, and James's organization, TruFund Financial Services, one of the best CDFIs in the state of New York, were one of my partners, one of the state's partners, in what we call the New York Forward Loan Fund. And so folks thought we were a little crazy because here we are in the start of the pandemic looking to make loans. And what we did is that we said we're going to target this to small businesses that have difficulty accessing capital. And so we limited the loans to $100,000. We focus on minority communities. We want to make sure these are small businesses with less than 100 employees. All right? And we said, okay, we're going to make the application relatively simple. Right? It was an online application. And so you fast forward a year since we started, again, through the help and through the perseverance of organizations like TruFund Financial Services, Pursuit, NDC, Ascendus, we wound up lending over $100 million. $100 million to 1,700 small businesses throughout the state in 57 counties in the state.
Wow, that's amazing.
So,
Yeah.
and it was an endeavor because we're in the middle of a pandemic. No one knew how it would come out. And the good thing is so far, everyone's paying us back. So what we're able to do, right? And that's great.
Yeah.
I think one of the most important things that we got to try to dispel is that a minority business is inherently riskier than a non-minority business. And we have statistics that show that's a fallacy, right? So my team and I, we work during the gamut. We work with individuals that need money for construction purposes. So if you need a loan because you get a contract in New York State, we can help you with that. You need surety bonding, we help you with the surety bonding process. So from my perspective is this, that it should not be an issue that folks have difficulty accessing capital. It should be an inherent right of a small business. If you qualify for a loan, you should get a loan. And the fact that I'm in Harlem or if I am in Binghamton is irrelevant to my need, right? And so when you walk in, and I'm not taking shots at banks, I love banks, we need them, but if I walk into a bank, the color of my skin should not predetermine whether you're gonna give me a loan or not. It should be whether I'm qualified, whether my business has the financials to support my request, and those should be the issues that you're looking at, not where I'm located, not what I look like, and we should move past that. So New York State is leading the nation. I think Julissa mentioned it. We are leading the nation with helping MWBEs move forward. Our utilization rate is better than any other state in the United States. So I'm very proud to be a part of that, and I'm hoping to continue that work as we move forward.
Thank you, Ray, and thank you for that work. And I'm really excited to hear the success of the New York Forward Loan Program. And I want to piggyback off of that and turn it back to James to see if you can you share with us some specific success stories that you have seen. You mentioned earlier, what you've seen throughout the pandemic really has highlighted the resiliency and what that really means. How have businesses have had to adapt and shift. So if you can talk a little bit about some specific success stories that there are some takeaways here for the audience.
Yeah. And I think I'll begin by saying on the New York Forward program, under the state's leadership here, was how we looked at small businesses. And when you're in the middle of a pandemic and everything's shut down, you can't solely rely on their current financial statements, right? Because that's not indicative of where they are. So New York Forward allowed us to kind of look back to determine success and then kind of build with capital going forward. And so one of the things that we have seen from a success of some of the small businesses that have come through that program and other programs that TruFund is offering was the ability of our small businesses, their resiliency, the ability to adapt, right? And so There's examples where we had clients who, were in the event management business and largely centered around catering. We know at that time that was just completely shut down. And so a lot of businesses would have just folded, but this minority business owner said, no, I'm going to adapt. They went out and found city contracts to provide emergency food for the emergency workers under COVID-19. Kept them alive, significant capital to their business. They came to TruFund Fund. We gave them the capital. They are now growing and thriving. So the ability to kind of be resilient, but it wouldn't have happened without the access to capital. They could have had the dream, they've got a contract, but where do they get the capital? And you can't rely on their financials that, through a COVID period, but you had to believe in the business owner and understand where they historically have been from a financial perspective.
Excellent, thank you.
Yep.
And Molly, what success stories can you highlight for us?
Absolutely. We have been privileged to work with so many small business owners, both pre-COVID and during COVID. We were on the phone with them, many of them in tears. They had, put all of their blood, sweat, and tears into these businesses and worried that they were on the brink of losing them. We have also been really encouraged and inspired by those same business owners. They have pivoted on a dime, many of them, and it's about really staying in touch with their customers and figuring out what their customers need, and then how to deliver those sometimes brand new services that were not available previously. We had a wonderful business owner in Schenectady. She runs a small, medium-sized gift shop there, focusing really on locally made goods. During COVID, that was not what people were looking for. They were looking for groceries, and they were looking as much as possible to be supporting other local food producers, really understanding that was part of their responsibility. And she, did a complete about-face and started stocking locally made goods in her store and doing curbside pickup and, filling people's refrigerators with what they really needed. We had another business that was dance classes, wonderful ballroom dance instructors, and very popular leading up to COVID. And of course, during COVID, that was impossible. And so they did an about face and, learned new technology that they were not familiar with. And had a lot of support from their customers and put their dance classes online, and they were still able, their customers were able to participate. There was still that sense of camaraderie. They still were able to support this business that they had grown to love, but they were able to adapt to these new circumstances. And we saw that again and again. If given the opportunity and given the resources and the tools to pivot and to serve their customers with new needs, these small businesses will do it.
Thank you, Molly. And Ray, I want to go back. I mean, it's amazing, truly. 57 counties out of 62 across the state. For, to get folks to qualify for the Forward Loan Program. What did you learn? What have you seen, and what strategies have you implemented to make that happen? I think, I've seen your work, and I know that it's also based on you and the team. But if you can just flesh out a little bit more, and as you went along the way, I think going back, with TruFund being a partner in this and others, what can you tell us a little bit more about that success story?
Sure. I mean, the first thing we have to get around, for me personally, as I travel around the state, is just that this is my first time going upstate, right? And so I remember sitting with groups of people, and they would say to me, well, Ray, you're from New York City. You don't know what's going on here, right? And I said, no, I know what's going on. And I would give them a flyer, and I noticed the flyer had a 212 number on it. So here I am in Cattaraugus County, with a group of small businesses, and all my information has 212 numbers on it. I said, that doesn't make sense. It's not connecting with the folks there. We went back and we changed them. But the idea was, every time I went to a different county, I knew that there was one thing, the need was the same. Small business owner wants a loan, how do we help them? I have a success story. I can't mention her name because I don't want to embarrass her, but she has a furniture company in central New York. So I met with her, I was at a forum, and she introduced herself to me. She said, hi, Rafael, I need help. I need a loan. I want to buy a building. I said, well, give me your financial statements. I gave her the financial statements. I looked at them, and I was like, this is probably not going to happen in my mind, right? Because, James, you look at financial statements, either it's there or it's not there. But this woman's story was so compelling. I said, you know what? It's so easy to say no, but my job is to say yes. So I went to a CDFI. I said, lend her the money. Oh, she's not good. No, she's perfect. Lend her the money. Lend her the money. We gave her a $250,000 loan. She was able to buy her building. Again, I won't mention her name, but right now, every time she sees me, she's so happy because we were able to help her. And my initial impression was to say no, right? And then I said, well, I'm not a banker. I have the ability to say yes. So when you go out throughout the state and 57 counties, I promised the folks in North Country, I'll do more in North Country, right? But the idea is when we go out and we talk to small businesses, I always tell the person, tell me exactly what you need. And do not tell me what you think I want to hear. Tell me how much money you need. Tell me how you're going to repay us. And let's move from here. I have my last success story I just finished is a woman-owned business in Brooklyn, New York. I don't know if Mike Gardner's here or he can hear me, but Mike Gardner introduced me to her. And the MTA had a tremendous opportunity. She had a tremendous opportunity at MTA. But she needed the working capital to buy the materials that she needed. So working with, again, TruFund and CDFIs like TruFund through our Bridge Success Program, we were able to provide her a line of credit, able to give her money to buy a building she's in. And so from my perspective, that's what we should be doing.
Yep.
And that's what we do. We want to say yes to people who normally hear no. And we want people to prepare themselves so that when you get a loan from the state, when you get a loan from a CDFI, Community Loan Fund, one of the best in upstate New York, when you get a loan from them, you should prepare yourself so that you can wean yourself off a CDFI and go right to a bank. But what I found, that doesn't happen because the services that New York State and the CDFI community provides, the banks can't meet. They can't match.
That's right. And
So
Ray,
they don't want to go to a bank.
Yeah, and Ray, if I could just point out, I think you said something very, very important as it relates to the relationships from a CDFI perspective. We say to our customers all the time, there's no judgment here. This is a no judgment zone. Come in, talk to us, tell us what your needs are. We're going to help you figure it out. And Molly, I'm sure that you've experienced the same thing. We just get down there, we'll sit with you, open up the shoebox, whatever you got, we're going to figure this out, right? Because we understand and believe in what you're trying to get accomplished, and we try to figure out a way to be innovative to get you the capital you need to move your business forward.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It absolutely is true. We really meet people where they're at. And before we say no, we want to look at the entire impact of a loan. And for us, that is not just, it is not solely profit. It is also the impact on the community. Is this going to create jobs? Is this going to put a building back into productive use? Is this going to, put food on the table? Is this going to revitalize an area of town? Or is this going to set up a business that we could see scaling and becoming larger and employing more people later because it's meeting a demand within the community? So we consider all of those possibilities, not just the, not just the bottom line.
Exactly.
And to your point, Molly, in terms of what you're seeing, you were telling me a little bit about the Child Care Accelerator program that you're working on. Can you tell us a little bit more about, because that's meeting the needs also of the time that you've seen this pandemic. Can you tell us more?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think we all know that childcare was an issue, even before the pandemic. There was an incredible shortage here in the Capital Region, and I know it's a national problem as well. The problem is twofold. It's affordability, but it's also supply. According to studies, there's about 30,000 children in the Capital Region who are not currently, between 0 and 5, who are not currently receiving care. And that's distressing for a number of reasons, not least of which is that, regular child care can be a predictor of success for the rest of their lives. And so, we saw this, we saw a demand for it locally, and we're a small business development agency and thought that we had a role here to play, and that we could be a force for good. and also that this is a high demand industry and the relatively low barrier to entry, and that these are potentially good, excellent business opportunities. And so we worked with Bright Side Up, which is our Capital District Child Care Council, and we are developing a curriculum that will train family and group care providers here in the Capital Region. We're going to pair it with mentorship. We have long provided loans to child care businesses, and so we will bring many of them back in to serve as mentors for these new small business owners, and really help them put together business plans so that they can then apply for financing at the end of it. We're expecting to be able to graduate up to 65 new providers a year, and then train another 10 to 20 existing providers. We think that'll make a big dent in the lists, the waiting lists, but also will really serve as a new business opportunity for a number of people here in the Capital Region, which we're excited about.
Yes, very. And James, do you have, and you talked a little bit about the real estate work that you're doing for business owners. Are there other similar programs that you've seen? I know that, again, I had asked earlier about, what are the trends, we've seen from your perspective, even nationally, including, pre-COVID, during COVID, the height of the pandemic, and now. I think one of the things that you want to focus on here at this forum, like the theme is, innovating forward. We got to think forward. What's the future? So we can continue to build wealth generation. So what's happening at TruFund?
So a lot. I think that, coming out of this, we also had to adapt, right? And so, because we had to meet the needs of our clients who are also adapting and kind of figure out what their needs were going to be post-COVID, and how that laid in the landscape of this racial wealth divide. And so we looked at, key components of that, certainly from a capital perspective for our small business owners, where they are today and what new business lines they're operating in and what does that mean from a capital perspective, but also those that have weathered the storm and have been, leasing properties for years, right? And when we looked at the analysis of that, we said, my God, you've been paying lease payments and capital improvements for 10 years, right? That's a real number compared to if they had utilized that money to, as a mortgage. Think about the wealth creation they've done for that property owner versus for what they could accrue for themselves. And so we're going to be launching and have launched a program that allows small business owners who are in that position, who are operating, have a good business model, but want to acquire their property versus leasing. We're going to make that available. We're going to make it available to them with as little as 5% down. So we're excited about that program. And if you're talking about wealth creation, we know wealth creation comes through ownership, right? We know that in this country, right? It's home ownership, it's real estate, it's ownership. And so we want to foster more of that going forward, coming out of the pandemic, to see if we can really create some wealth in our small business communities.
And that's happening in New York?
That's happening in New York. Absolutely.
So, that's exciting.
As well on a national basis. But from trends from a nationally, we see the same opportunities in small businesses really realizing that, having been hit hard by this pandemic and not having the resources in their pocket to really sustain it, they have to figure out new ways on how to create wealth and how to create that sustainability. And so they're all looking at opportunities to acquire, because we know over time the real estate appreciation will certainly they're going to be able to accrue value in, and maybe at some future point be able to draw equity upon, not only for their businesses but also for their own personal net worth as individuals.
Thank you.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
And Ray, what are some things that you've seen again throughout the course of the work that you're doing, and looking forward to working on?
Interesting that the building of wealth is so important to our community. Our inability to accumulate wealth is something that holds us back as we move forward. One of the things we're working on now is working with the micro businesses. So the pandemic has an effect on folks that a lot of folks lost their jobs or were laid off, and they gave them a chance to say, well, is this really what I want to do with the rest of my life? Right? Do I want to go back and work at the bank? Do I want to go back and work at the grocery store? Or do I want to start my own business? So we started an initiative to help what we call single employer firms, right? Sole proprietors who need the capital to make their dreams come to fruition. We also, at the same time, realize that there is a group of individuals in New York State who don't have bank accounts. Right? If you think about 25% of New Yorkers do not have a bank account. So it's very difficult to create wealth and get yourself into the financial mainstream without a bank account. So we put these two things together, and we started an initiative, with again, TruFund, Community Loan Fund, a lot of CDFIs throughout the state are working with us, where we're going to do two things. We're going to get money in the hands of these micro businesses, make loans, $10,000, $15,000, so that they in turn can start their business and grow their business and build the relationship with the CDFIs that they need to continue to grow. The next part is, well, let's get the folks who are not banked, who are still using check cashiers and still using payday lenders, and let's get them banked. And so we started, again, working with CDFIs and CDFI credit unions to open up this world so that individuals now, instead of going to a check cashier, buying money orders, paying for fees unnecessarily, go to a bank. We work with these credit unions to open up accounts for them so that building wealth is something that will come easy for them. Right? Right now, you cannot build wealth if you're not employed and if you don't have a bank account. Mm-hmm. So micro businesses, let's get you to the point where you could be self-sustaining. And we'll take the risk that banks or other individuals may not take the risk for. And let's get you banked. Let's get you open a bank account, use the ATM card, and start the process of introducing yourself into the financial mainstream.
Thank you, Ray. And James, I think that maybe we can start off with you in this question. It's a popular question that we often receive is, do your lending services include bonding on the construction side? As you know, that's a huge challenge. And so if you could talk to us a little bit about that.
Huge challenge, underscore that, huge challenge for sure. And our clients who are in our shop are really faced with that challenge. And so what TruFund has been able to do is really provide them with the line of credit or capital they need to provide a surety company that they have some basis upon something else to draw upon other than the individual's net assets. And so we've been able to help in that regard, and we'll continue to do that. We understand that bonding is a critical point. It's that next level opportunity. And so if they can't get through that financial threshold, right, then there's no real gain there. So we look and we work hard with our contractors. We have a stable of a group of individuals that we work with in this regard on an ongoing basis, and certainly welcome others to come to the organization if in fact they're challenged with that that capital piece with regard to bonding.
Is there anything, Molly, you want to add?
We have taken the same approach, really. We recognize that it's a huge challenge. It's the ceiling that is so hard to break through. And we do provide, our micro loans start at $25,000 for a startup and up to $50,000 for a business that's been in business for 1 year and has all of their records in place. We have found that is really helpful for accumulating equipment and bringing on additional workers, building up inventory. Mm-hmm. We have very flexible products. The lines of credit have been hugely popular, but it's a tough lift.
Mm-hmm. Certainly is.
Any thoughts there, Ray, as you go?
Well, surety bonding, it inherently is difficult to get a surety bond. So New York State has a surety bonding program in place now, where we'll work with you, hold your hand, and put you in contact with a surety bond agency and say to them, we're going to guarantee 30% of a bond up to $2 million. Right? Because if you need a surety bond more than $2 million, you don't need my help. You can get that on your own. Right? It's at under $2 million and stuff where people don't have a history of getting the bonding. So what we'll do is we'll walk them through the process. We will find a surety agent. We have a few that we work with and get them bonded. Now, to date, we've secured over $100 million in bonding capacity for over 120 small businesses. 70% of them are minority owned. All right, and because the bonding process, those of you who have gone through the bonding process know it's a tedious process. It's a lot of applications. It's a lot of paperwork. And if you don't know the process, it's very difficult to get bonding. So what we do is we'll help you through the process. We'll work with you step by step to get you bonded. And so far, the good thing about it, what I found interesting is that over $100 million in bonding, and we've had one loss of $27,000. Right? And that was just a misunderstanding between them and the survey agent, so it wasn't a big deal. But again, it goes to this false narrative that minority businesses are inherently more riskier than a non-minority business. I think New York State and work with CDFIs, we proved that to be a fallacy. Because I think James will attest to this, Molly will attest to this, loan losses aren't where they should be if these minority businesses are so risky. The idea now is just continue that process, continue to get the money out to folks, and we're going to have, I can't steal thunder, but we're rolling out another surety round program in the upcoming year.
So stay tuned.
Stay tuned. Can't give the details, but it's coming.
And so just going back to the hand-holding that's often needed and that you all provide to MWBE firms, if we can just share, are there any specific resources at your organization that you think would be helpful for the public to know, or any additional best practices? You know, a lot of this, I think what I really love to hear, what you shared, this is a no judgment zone, right? And just bring it all to the table. Because ultimately, like I said in the beginning, this is not just about the business, but it's about your family, it's about a community. So James, what are some resources at TruFund that folks should know about?
I'll begin by saying that we've always focused on providing capital, right? But we also know that along with capital, advisory services is sometimes needed. And so TruFund has a very robust platform that provides not only cohort-specific training, but one-on-one technical assistance support. And so I have a pet saying in my organization, their success is tied to my repayment. So I want to make sure that we are positioning them to be successful. We have business assessment tools, and again, it's just no judgment zone. Just come in, let's have a conversation, right? Just talk about where you're going and what you need. And a part of that, we have a business assessment tool that really kind of evaluates you as a business owner in terms of where we feel your gaps might be, and bring attention to that to you. And if it's something that we can't support you internally with, we have a network of resources that we can refer you to get that support. But it's a wraparound approach. We just don't give you capital and you go out the door. We're here for you. We're invested in you. Don't run from us, run to us, that kind of philosophy. We're going to be here to help you and support you to kind of get you through it because we want you to be successful.
Thank you. And Molly, what about your organization?
I would echo that sentiment. You know, the Community Loan Fund was really founded with that idea of development in mind. We don't disappear at the loan closing. You know, we're there with our business owners every step of the way. And I think, you know, it's true of most small businesses. You know, most small businesses are started because someone is very good at, you know, floral arrangements, or they're very good at baking, or they're very good at carpentry, or they're very good. They aren't necessarily great at accounting or marketing or, you know, any of these other, but these are vital skills. These are skills that can be taught. And that's the perspective that we've always come from. You know, we have an 8-week business planning course that we offer throughout the year. We have free workshops. We did 41 workshops this year on, you know, everything from financial management to social media strategy to marketing strategy, and we can help you know, build successful practices in that way, and they're very well utilized. We have a new online platform that we have a lot of our trainings on, and found that to be really popular.
Ray, is there anything from at ESD that you want to draw people's attention to that has been helpful with the work that you've been doing?
Sure. I'm glad you mentioned that because I was wondering, should I say this or shouldn't I say it? But I'm going to say it. Let me draw attention to something right now. New York State currently has a small business grant program. And I'm managing, it's a $750 million grant program. If you go online and you put down New York State Pandemic Grant Program, if you have a small business, and this is technical assistance theoretically, right? Because I'm giving you technical assistance on how to grow your business. if you can get a grant anywhere from $5,000 to $50,000, if your business revenue is anywhere from $25,000 to $2.5 million, the application process is online. It's very simple. It's a very simple process. There's over 25,000 small businesses in New York State who can attest to the fact that it's an easy process. Mm-hmm. So to this date, we've issued over $390 million in grants. Right? So my suggestion to everyone who can hear me or if you see me now is to go online, the New York State Small Business Pandemic Relief Grant Program, or just put down Small Business Grant Program, and you can apply online, and that's one way that you can start. We think this is a way we can help you get through this pandemic. Mm-hmm. I'm going to try something different, and I know my boss, she thinks I'm crazy. When I go out to a place like this, I give up my cell number. Let me tell you why I give you my cell number. Because I want you to call me if you need assistance. You can text me, and I'll text you back. And the folks who are listening, who are online viewing this, my cell number is 646-599-6493. And my name is Ray. Again, my cell phone number is 646-599-6493. I do that because this is what I want to do. I want to help. So the only way you're going to reach me is to call me on my cell. You can text me, I'll get back to you. And I can send you all information you need about the myriad of programs that we have to help small businesses grow in New York State.
I think he wants you to repeat the phone number.
646-599-6493. Somewhere in New York State, my daughter's looking at me like I'm crazy. Because she always says, Dad, why do you do that? And because this is the reason. We want to help folks, so thank you.
No, thank you, Ray, and thank you for sharing your phone number. You're going to get a lot of calls and texts. Yep. But we just received a question from our online audience, and Ray, I would love to see if, the question is, we are a technology company currently working on a DEI, compliance, and training software. Okay. Are there any grants or help available from the state?
Well, the Small Business Grant Program would definitely help.
Yep.
Right, and that's something you should look into immediately. We have a venture fund that can help you with that also. So, I mean, the venture fund, you go in, you make the presentation, and if it works, you can get venture capital to help you grow your business. So those are two avenues that can help you immediately. I would suggest that you get online and apply for a grant. Okay,
well, thank you. And I wanted to go back because I think we can't underscore this, especially after these 2 years. Jace, back to your point, James, about what you've uncovered or what you're working towards, for example, like the racial wealth gap. Mm-hmm. And how are you, and what partners are you working towards? How are you seeing these coalition, these strategies being formed, and what can we do together to address this in a more concerted way? Yeah,
great question. I think and this is not only here in New York State, and TruFund is we have a national CDE, and we also operate in the states of Texas, Alabama, and Louisiana as well. So I get a broad perspective on it. And so from an ecosystem perspective, we recognize that we're all part of this, right? It's the CDFIs, it's the state partners, and I will say, having worked in other states, New York State is the great state. There's no more, the programs that the state offer here in New York are by far greater than any other state that we have an opportunity to kind of work in. So kudos to New York State. But what we're seeing there is that a real need for us to come together for the first time. And we need banks to be part of this ecosystem as well, and foundations. So for the first time in my tenure here at TruFund, is that there's a real concerted effort to understand the issues that really plaguing Black and brown communities, and it's the racial wealth gap, and how do we get more capital, and what form of capital should it take, and what does that look like? And so those conversations are robust, and I'm excited and encouraged by them, but we can't stop there, right? So we're looking at how to be more innovative in our own approach, right, to be able to meet those needs of our clients, Black and brown business owners, today, and not kind of come out of an ideation session and really figure out how this is going to be prospectively, but we want to take actions today. So some of the things that TruFund is initiating is around, that ability to create wealth and what does capital look like? And we've also launched equity programs with some very significant partners like Morgan Stanley and the Ford Foundation to get our black and brown developers access to equity to kind of continue to build affordable housing in our communities. We set up a partnership with the Community Preservation Corporations to get equity into kind of the emerging developer market. And so these type of strategies, when we think about how do we create wealth, really is challenging TruFund to kind of think more robustly. And I know that Molly and others in New York Forward is just a demonstration of the collective power, what can happen when we all come together, right? It's just been tremendous, and the impact, as Ray alluded to, has been significant. And I'm seeing that happen across the country.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We at Community Loan Fund, racial wealth gap is, as it is for all of us, it is a concern. You know, it's part of why we're here and our mission. And we are a point of entry for many people who, to Ray's point, are very largely unbanked. And so where do they get information from, and where are they getting, you know, it's not taught in schools. It's not, you know, shared in other places. And so we have tried to bring a lot of the financial planning, financial literacy to the services that we provide to part of our curriculum. And we had just launched last year a financial planning component as part of our trainings and workshops. We've done 11 so far. We've been fortunate enough to partner with a number of banks in the area and a number of wealth management firms too, and providing very basic information, again, really starting with where people are and what are their goals moving forward. It's not a one-size-fits-all. It's not prescriptive in terms of what we think people should aspire to, or, you know, you should, you know, 50, 30, 20 rule. It's where are you and what would you like to see happen? And what are, you know, what's your goal setting and how can we get you there? And that has been, you know, a really, I think, a good addition to what we do, and we'd like to continue to grow it.
Thank you, Molly. And so, you know, to close it up, I would love to offer you all an opportunity. We'll start with Ray. Is there anything else you'd like to add to the conversation, a takeaway for the audience that speaks to how we can continue to invest in DEI, equity, right, and also, you know, for the communities that we serve?
Sure, I'll be quick. I mean, for me, it's really quite simple. It is, we're here to help. And I firmly believe that you have to want to be helped. All right? And so we know there's a challenge. We know that accessing capital is difficult. We know that there's a systemic racism that goes on in the financial services market. But you have three folks here, and not to mention, we have, the best chief diversity officer in the country in Julissa Gutierrez. So we have all the tools you need to help grow your business. So I just suggest that you continue to attend these forums, reach out to the state government, reach out to your CDFIs, and take hold of the help that we are offering to you.
Molly?
I would agree. I think that we are you know, we say that New York is the state of opportunity. It really is the state of opportunity. ESD has provided a number of COVID-related grant programs and a loan program this year. They've paired it with a lot of technical assistance to get people ready to apply for it and to then succeed with it. We have a very healthy CDFI community here in the state, a wonderful coalition. You know, we get calls all the time, you know, from, you know, other counties entirely, and then the ones we serve 11 counties, and we'll get calls, well, do you serve, you know, such and such county? I say, we don't, but you know what, I'll give you the number for the place that does. We have a very healthy CDFI community here. We're very lucky in that way. I would echo Ray's sentiments. Reach out, you know, call the Community Loan Fund. If we can't assist you, we can find someone who can.
Mm-hmm. And you'll be sticking around, right? So
Absolutely.
folks can continue to engage. And what about James? What are some major takeaways for the audience?
The major takeaway that I would leave you with is that in this moment, there's a plentiful of resources that have never been available before. I would really encourage you to take advantage of all of that. The CDFI sector is, sort of a good place for you if, in fact, you need advice or direction. We're just not capital providers. We're here to kind of support you. And so find a CDFI in your community, find out who the contact person is, get in there, meet with them, because they have a host of resources available like none other before. I say all the time, in this moment, we should be seizing the opportunity, because we don't know if it's a moment or a movement. And so we're planning on it to be a moment, and in this moment, there are resources available that you should avail yourself to, and so I'll close there.
Well, we actually have a little bit more time, so we can continue this lively conversation. But I want to just summarize a few of the things that we've heard thus far, and that is that clearly we're here to help. You know, New York State is full of opportunity. We have 3 amazing individuals here, and the organizations that they represent, the entities that are here available, both from the public and private sector. And I think that, one of the things to underscore again, given everything that we've all been through, is to look for ways that we can collaborate a little bit more, where there's, taking, the words from here, there's no judgment. And so, I think that, Ray, is there things that, that you have come across in terms of across your travels? I keep saying that because I love just the image of Ray traveling across the state, and with his cell phone with his cell phone ringing. In terms of going back to equity, right? And yes, it's true. It's not a riskier business to get into business with MWBE, right? Particularly a minority-owned business. But beyond that, how can we address equity from your perspective to ensure that there's access to capital, to funding, to these assurances that will keep communities alive?
Well, equity in itself means, in my mind, if we're talking about equity besides the sweat equity you put in, it is the cash you have in your business, right? So you need cash, and with a startup cash, you develop your business, and equity grows as your business grows. As you start making more money and you put more money back into your business, that's a source of equity for your business. You want to build wealth? Have a successful business, right? Because your business will sustain you as you're looking to grow your individually, your family. So for me, equity starts from just the hard work it takes to get the business going, because we're talking equity from a business point of view. And I see so often, and I'm so proud to have been part of so many people who've had a great idea, didn't look for anyone to help them, did it on their own, and finally said, you know what, I may need a little assistance. Come to New York State, go to a CDFI partner, get that assistance, and help me build this business and develop the equity I need so that my family can enjoy the fruits of my labor, that my children can go to better schools, that my children can have a better life because of the work I'm putting into my small business now. That's the way I look at equity, is helping your family grow.
Do you want to, anyone else jump in?
So I think that's a great analogy that Ray has laid out. And typically, from an institutional perspective, when you look at a small business, you don't see the individual, right? You haven't seen these blood, sweat, and tears. You haven't seen them refinance their house. You haven't seen them exhaust their bank accounts. So, from our perspective, I'm looking at you as an individual that owns a business, right? Because your wealth and that business they're all tied together. And so from an equity perspective, we want to make sure that you have access to all the available capital that's available to kind of help you, move your business along. And I think the word equity is really, really important. And I'm looking at clients who, over our tenure, I think Ray, you hit on this point earlier about the idea is kind of get them to a place where they no longer, need our services, but can move into a traditional financial sector. But that's not the case, right? Because that they found over time is that we become a trusted advisor. And so we're invested in them and they're invested in us. And so we again, there's no judgment. You come in, just lay it all on the table, and let's have a conversation about how we can get you to the next step. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, when we talk about equity, I think we have to be mindful that, women, for instance, have 30% of the businesses nationally, but only get about 4% of the capital. And for minorities, it's even less. And that we need to right-size that in order to really build a path forward. It is in everyone's best interest it's an engine of growth. It's about revitalizing communities. It's in everyone's best interest for there to be equitable access to capital. Financial inclusion benefits all of us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Molly, one of the things too I will add there is that I wanted to say is that we're having you don't have to go to the bank. Molly and I are having those conversations with the bank, right? So I'm in there in their face saying, we need this capital to do this work. So you don't have to have that conversation. We're having that conversation, right? Exactly.
Yeah, advocacy is huge. And I know, the CDFI coalition here in New York State was really successful earlier this year in helping raise awareness about predatory lending and the dangers of predatory lending. As a result, legislation was passed, which is so crucial to all businesses, but minority and women-owned businesses are particularly vulnerable to that. And that's a role that we can play as well, really advocating for our customers and our clients.
And what are you hearing? What are they saying when you go back and you advocate? What are some of the things? Spill the tea a little bit if you can. Or maybe not.
I mean, I think that I think there's a lot of opportunity for growth. I think that we are in a not post-pandemic, but I think in the environment that we are now post-COVID, I think that a lot of issues are being brought to the forefront in really important ways. I think that we saw, minority businesses were disproportionately impacted by COVID. Aid did not go to them in the first wave or the second wave, and they were more likely to be shuttered as a result. And I think we're grappling with those impacts now. I think we all are aware of that in a really first-person, important, vulnerable way, in a way that we weren't before. I think it makes our jobs as advocates easier, if you will. I think people are getting the gravity of the situation in a new way.
And there's some financial institutions that you can't paint them all with the same brush. And I was chuckling when I deferred to Molly to kind of respond first here, but they have really stepped up, and we've got some significant partners. We obviously couldn't do this work if we didn't have the support of major financial institutions. And there are a number of them, and I'm at the risk of naming them at this point because I don't want to omit anybody, but they've all been super supportive of TruFund. You can just go to our websites if you want to see who they are, because they're prominently featured there. But they have just been tremendous, and I think that there has been a movement to understand the important roles that CDFI play and our ability to kind of advocate for our small business owners, and certainly to close out with saying, when it comes to the state, we don't have to do much advocacy because Ray is knocking on our door saying, I got a program, what do you think, right? Can we do this, right? So kudos to Ray and his team over at the state.
Yes. Ray, any last words here?
No, we're good. I mean, look, this has been an absolute pleasure for me. I love doing these type of events. I think I have the greatest job in the world. Like, I wake up every morning and I'm afraid they're gonna say, you know what, Ray, you can't do this no more. Right? Because I love the job, I love helping people, I love working with folks like James and Molly, and definitely Julissa, who keeps me on my team, on my toes, I should say. I think Julissa, one time you coined a phrase for me, which was, I was voluntold to do something. Remember that? So,
I do not remember that at all.
But I do love it, and I appreciate the opportunity to speak to the folks here today.
Well, thank you so much to each of you for the work that you do, what you're leading, bringing DI to the forefront of your business, of our businesses here in this community. And I do hope that everyone takes advantage of them. They're here to help. They're gonna say yes. And we look forward to continuing the conversation offline. Thank you, everyone. Enjoy the forum.
Thank you.